In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Today's guest is someone who knows her way around a spotlight, a classroom, and now an entirely new world of fiction. Author Lisa Flint has lived a life filled with plot twists. Born in New York, raised in San Francisco, and now watching cows graze on her ranch in the Sierra Nevada foothills. A classically trained actor, a celebrated drama teacher, a published playwright, and now a debut novelist. Dale brings a deep love of storytelling, Shakespeare, and strong, complex characters to everything she does. Her new book, Finding Juliet, is a time travel young adult fantasy with heart, humor, and a healthy dose of Elizabethan chaos. It's published by Turtle Cove Press, right down the street from me in Tallahassee, Florida. Lisa Flint, welcome to the conversation. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I have to say, that's like the best intro ever I've ever experienced. So thank you for that. I'm done.
Your background spans so much, acting, teaching, and now writing. How did those experiences shape your decision to write a novel?
I've been a performer my entire life. I began on the stage when I was 5 years old, tap dancing, was a founding member of the Young People's Musical Theater Company in San Francisco, trained with the American Conservatory Theater and California Shakespeare Festival. I've worked with Shakespeare in Santa Fe and Cal Shakes and the Sacramento Shakespeare Festival. You're noticing a theme there. And I made the decision long ago that I didn't want to do it for a living. I thought about it. I really thought very hard about becoming a professional actor, but it seemed like having to make a living at it would kill my joy of it. And so I looked around for something else to do, and I decided to try teaching. And I found that I actually really love teaching too, which is a type of performance. And really teaching and theater together, it's all about communication and empathy and sharing stories and learning somebody else's stories and finding ways to connect. And when you add on to that, I'm a big book nerd. I like reading a series more than watching a series. And I started to enter my middle age. And you start to take stock as you enter your late 30s, early 40s, and you think, okay, what else do I want to do with my life? And since I always have 3 different books on my book stand next to me, I just decided the natural thing would be to, you know what? I'm going to write a book. Before I'm done with this life, I'm going to write a novel. I had never taken a creative writing class. I don't think I've ever written a short story. But I had written long form in the form of my master's thesis, so I know I could put the words on the page. And so I just decided, heck with it, I'm going to try. I'm going to try and write a book. And so that's what I did, combining my love of storytelling and connection and fun and love of books. I'm going to try to do it.
Finding Juliet had a 12-year gestation period. What kept you coming back to the story?
Part 1 takes place in 2013. And the reason it takes place in 2013 is because that's when I started writing the book. It took actually 8 years to write the book. The first year or so, I spent writing the first third of the book, and it is all in modern times. And it flowed so easily. I knew what I wanted. I wanted a parody of Romeo and Juliet. And luckily, Romeo and Juliet is incredibly easy to parody. And I just had so much fun with it. And then I hit a brick wall because all of a sudden there's a time jump. There's traveling 400 years in the past. And for the longest time, I couldn't get it right. It didn't sound like the same book. I gave the first part of the book to my husband to read, and he loved it. And he's the kind of person who'll tell me the truth. He was really engaged in the story. And then I gave him the first draft of the first part where they jumped back in time. And I could tell he was still being nice, but I lost him. And it didn't sound like the same book. I was trying to make it too authentic. I was trying to make the characters sound like they actually really and truly spoke 400 years ago, which is indecipherable. And that wasn't working for me. So I would go through periods of time where I would put it away and then try again and then put it away. And in the midst of this, I'm working full time and I'm raising kids. And so there's other stuff going on in my life, but I would go back to it. And I finally just had an epiphany going back to the movies that I liked that were historical fiction, the books that I liked that were historical fiction. And it really just occurred to me that they're modern. The way people relate to each other stays modern in the midst of all the stuff going around them. And so once I allowed myself to retain what had made the first part of the book so special for me and add in flavors and details of the history, it became much easier. And then I got another stumbling block when I tried to figure out a plot point and, okay, how am I going to resolve this thing? So I had the luxury of having a day job where I could leave it for a while, let it gestate in my brain, and then come back to it. And I finished it in 2021, which is when basically everyone on the planet, I think, finished a book because you sat at home with the COVID years. And I just get a feeling that lots of people either drank a lot or finished their novel or did them both. So that's what I did, is I finally finished it when I had a little bit more time on my hands to be at home.
Your protagonist, Alex, is sharp, flawed, and funny. How did she come to life for you?
She's a foster kid. And throughout my 20-year teaching career in secondary schools, junior high and high school, I've had lots of foster kids in my classroom. And they're some of the most inspiring, resilient people that I've had the privilege to meet. So a little bit of the inspiration was just from seeing the courageousness and the resilience of the kids in my own classroom. And I knew that she had to be on her own. All these heroes' journeys of young people, they have to depend on themselves. So I knew that I didn't want her to, I knew that she had to be some kind of orphan of sorts. She's a little bit of me. She's a little bit of characters, students that I've known, but she also is my classic Shakespearean heroine who disguises herself as a boy, who's incredibly resourceful, who has a sense of humor. So I think in addition to the inspiration of my students, I take inspiration from Rosalind and As You Like It and Viola from Twelfth Night. They make their way into her personality as well. A little bit of self-awareness is a good thing for a heroine.
How did you first fall in love with Shakespeare?
I'd been a performer, as I said. My dream a long time ago was to be on Broadway. And I realized what a mediocre singer I was. So I began doing other things. I was actually shamed into reading Shakespeare by hanging out with a group of people who I told I was a serious actress. And then they asked me a question about a Shakespeare play, these people who weren't in the theater. And I had to admit that I hadn't read any Shakespeare, which was embarrassing. So I set about reading a bunch of Shakespeare. I read both history tetralogies as a 17-year-old, which is 8 history plays. I read all the classics by myself. And then I really just fell in love with the language. And I studied it in college. My bachelor's degree is in theater arts with a Shakespearean emphasis, and so is my master's degree. And it just became my wheelhouse. Once you go Shakespeare, you're never going to go back. It's just the way that we lack in the modern age, the vocabulary, the means of expressing ourselves. It's just like breathing air to find someone who expresses the things that are in our hearts in such poetic ways.
Dale Lisa Flint is our guest. We're talking about Finding Juliet. Her website is dalelisaflint.com. You are also a playwright. How does that impact your fiction?
I was teaching high school drama and I needed to find a play for my students to perform virtually, and I didn't like anything that I saw. So I knew what I wanted. I just couldn't find it. So it occurred to me that, okay, I know what I want. I can't find it. Maybe I need to just write it myself. And so my play was basically another parody of a classic play, Waiting for Godot, which kind of seemed appropriate to the existential angst and dread of being on a distance learning journey and not being able to talk to the people in person, and you're always constantly waiting for somebody else to join the chat. I do think in terms of a playwright, I do think in terms of 5-act structure and the importance of of defining a character's motivations, and probably dialogue, I would say, is my strong suit at this point. I really enjoy writing fun, snappy dialogue. I have to remind myself, okay, you need a paragraph in here somewhere to describe what else is going on in this scene.
What's your favorite Shakespeare line?
I love the times when Shakespeare gets simple. Because when we think of Shakespeare, we think of lines like the multitudinous seas in Carnadine, right? The things that are beautiful to say and beautiful to hear, but are incomprehensible to a modern audience. But I love the times when Shakespeare gets simple. If it were done when 'tis done, then we're done quickly, right? We're going to repeat the same words over and over. Or when King Lear says, never. It sounds weird, but of course I love the beautiful passages. Beatrice, who says, there was a star danced and under that was I born. The things that bring little tears to my eyes. And the beautiful poetry in Romeo and Juliet. But I just love it sometimes when Shakespeare strips it all bare, because we know he can say it in a flowery way, but he chooses to get to the heart of it, to really punch you in the gut. I love those moments.
And it's meant to be interpreted aloud. When you hear a really great Shakespearean actor emote, each one of those words can have a fully different meaning.
Definitely. Shakespeare's plays were meant to be seen and to be heard. And so that's what we do in my own classroom when I teach, is we say the words. And it's so fun to watch kids recite Shakespeare, to listen to them, and they're good at it. We think that kids who are young, 11, 12 years old, that Shakespeare is too young. No, that's the time when tons of words are different and new to them. And it's just Shakespeare is just one other word that they got to learn the meaning to. And they enjoy wrapping their lips around Shakespeare's words all the time.
How did you get interested in time travel?
This is the point in time in which I'm going to start talking about Outlander way too much, probably. When a woman is pregnant and staying up all night nursing a child, there's a lot of hormones that happen, and there's a lot of empty night that happens. And so I think it's natural to develop a sort of obsession to get you through it. And for me, Outlander was my obsession. I would read it in the middle of the night while I stayed up with my babies. And I just fell head first into it. The romance, the humor, the adventure. I loved it so much because it was historical fiction, which I love so much, as well as the whole fish out of water and what would it be like to actually be a modern person back in a different time. And I read the series, and I read the series over again, and I deep dived into the fandoms, and certain questions always came up on those forums. Like, why did they cast an actress with blue eyes and with her eyes should be whiskey colored? And this would happen over and over again. People would ask this question. Another question they would ask is, how old should my daughter be to read Outlander? This would come up. And people would reply, 18 years old. That content is way too mature. 15 years old. Depends on the girl. And so I started thinking, okay, what if there were a book that was Outlander, but for a preteen, early teen girl to read with her mom? And so that began the spark of an idea. My background in Shakespeare, my love of Elizabethan history, the idea that I really wanted, one of the things that would be on my obituary to be like, she wrote this book, and I could look at the book on my bookshelf. I thought, I can do this. I know this time period, and I love Outlander so much, and I see this as a gap on a library bookshelf, to have a fun time traveling book. And so that's how I got the idea originally for the time travel, is blame Diana Gabaldon for it and her legions of fans for giving me the idea.
Finding Juliet is the book. Dale Lisa Flint is our guest. Her website is dalelisaflint.com. You balance humor and serious themes beautifully. Was that intentional from the start or something that evolved during the writing?
My favorite books have humor in them. Even books that deal with the toughest of issues. It's the most human thing it's almost a survival mechanism, right? You've got to, even if you're going through tough things, you've got to find the humor in situations. And those are the books I most want to read. The books that make me laugh out loud and the books that make me cry, sometimes in the same chapter. And Shakespeare knew how to do that as well, too. He'll have the funniest scene right before he has the scene of the greatest trauma. I think not only is it something that I love personally, but technically I think is a really good way to structure a book in order to derive the maximum effect and engagement from the reader, keep them a little bit on their toes with the humor and the tough things that they have to go through. And just selfishly, I want to enjoy the book that I'm writing, so I want to include the humor to entertain myself as I'm going along. I just think it's important for the protagonist to have a sense of humor about what they're going through, unless you're writing a very different kind of book that I didn't want to write.
All of us who are creatives have that moment or moments of flow when the muse is singing and it feels our creativity is coming through us and not from us. Did that happen to you with Finding Juliet?
A little bit is where a little bit of my acting training comes in. In improv, we have the principle of yes and, where you don't shut down your partner's ideas because that's the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest thing is to say, no, it won't work. The harder thing to do is to say, yes, okay, I will go with this reality and then I will add to it. So I try to remember that as I was writing, that nobody was judging me here. There weren't any rules involved. I could make this what I wanted it to be. My idea was it's going to be a romance. It's going to be a Janie and Claire, but only for 17-year-olds. And it wouldn't happen. I couldn't make this. It's not really a spoiler. There is a romance in the book. There definitely is a romance in the book, but not the way I thought it was going to happen. I kept trying to make two characters fall in love, and it sounds really weird, but I know that I've heard other writers talk about this. The characters wouldn't let me make them fall in love. And so I had to just relax, sit back, and watch them to see what actually was going on there. And they literally showed me the way to the sort of the falling action of this book. The characters told me what their relationships were. And that was really a cool thing to experience. It was almost like putting my hands on a Ouija board and just letting it go and seeing what would happen. And that was a moment of epiphany for me, to enter into the flow space and to just see where it would go, because the novel didn't turn out how I thought it was going to be when I first started writing it 12 years ago.
Why do you think that stories about the past, especially through the lens of a modern teen, continue to resonate so strongly?
I think we're all just trying to figure out who we are and our place in this world. And sometimes it's difficult to figure that out while you're in the midst of it, with all the sensory input and the struggles of daily life and the different responsibilities a person has to have. That to adopt a sense of distance and to put yourself maybe in some other framework can be illuminating as to showing you who you really are.
What do you hope readers will take away from Finding Juliet?
I hope they will have fun. It's kind of a weird thing to say because I've gone back and reread my book way too many times and the rewriting process and things like this. But I've always been like, regardless of any judgment of my own writing, I enjoy my own book, which I think is an important thing. And so I hope that readers will take away not only the fun of the adventure, the possibilities of exploring this kind of cross-genre fiction, and also there is a message in there. I wouldn't say it's truly after-school special level of message, but it is a real message of, hey, to the young girl or young person reading this story, you have the power. Your life is in your own hands. You have the power of forgiveness. You have the power to self-actualize. Whatever your given circumstances in life, you can write your own ending.
Beautiful. The publisher is Turtle Cove Press in Tallahassee, Florida. Dale Lisa Flint has been our guest. Finding Juliet is the book. By the time this program premieres, it will be available wherever cool books are sold, but I hope that you will make the trip to Amador County, to Hine & Company, and buy your copy there. Dale Lisa Flint, thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. This is so cool. I love podcasts.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.